Please welcome Richard Lloyd.
Thank you very much indeed. Just a few words really on why we actually made the film to start with, because it possibly needs a little explanation. This is a 10-minute short, which was made in order to experience the full sort of gamut of what 3D would be able to throw at us for a feature that we're actually making later on this year. So this is a 10-minute teaser. It's a short film in its own right. It's not clips or anything. But it was designed for us to work out certain techniques, camera techniques, acting techniques, and visual effects techniques, and the ideas of how some of the visual effects that we wanted to work with in the main feature, we could actually start beginning to explore how we can create those and what they can, what we can achieve within the environments that we're actually trying to set up. And in the kind of style you see, the film is fairly dark. How that we could actually get a lot of the ideas that are in our director's head, in the producer's head, and in our cinematographer, Chris Seeger's head, about how this will all sort of manifest when we finally actually see it on the screen. So it was a trial run, a test. We worked very hard. It was done and finished as a feature. We screened it at the Berlin Film Festival in February. So we had effectively, it's a 4-day shoot with a couple of pickups, and effectively a 6-week post-production schedule before it was on screen in February. So it was a fairly hectic and very trying period and huge fun. Some of the best fun I've ever had in the film industry. So anyway, I hope you enjoy that, and I'll come back and talk more about the visual effects, because they'll be, once you see the sort of thing that we're actually trying to do, it makes more sense once you've actually seen them. For me to be able to sort of work on or talk more about the involvement and the kind of the roundedness that we were trying to sort of put together for the film. So, if I look first, and I will speak to you. Oh, I have a pair of these somewhere.
Well, thank you for that. Anything you'd like to say before we open it to the floor for?
Well,
apart from the fact that Chris Parkes was a wonderful stereographer. I only said that because he gave our keynote speech, so no.
Fine. Well, actually, Chris Parkes was wonderful.
Yes,
so,
yes.
Now, one of the things that I wanted to talk about really was that the scope for the use of visual effects in stereo, I think, is potentially mind-boggling, and we're sort of scratching the surface. What you've seen in that short piece today, we've got a number of different types of matte paintings. We have a number of different styles of visual effect. Some work better than others. Time is obviously an issue, and we were developing an idea so that some aspects of it are less fully realized in this version than there will be in the feature. But the kind of the ability to develop an environment through really strong 3D matte paintings is something that is a really useful and interesting way of actually making something more dynamic within your film. For example, where the van is driving around is basically a car park in Colindale, and it's pretty duff. Our matte paintings created a whole world of a journey in the first part that creates a kind of a movement through sort of part one of the sequence, which is entirely believable. Now, we could have finished those matte paintings a little better. We ran out of time. There are one or two little holes that people spotted. But as a kind of an end to create an environment that wasn't there. Now, obviously, these could have been done in 2D as well, quite comfortably done in 2D. But what they do actually give in stereo is a depth that actually sets you more into the world rather than actually just looking at an image. You feel like you almost belong to that image as you're watching. And other aspects of visual effects that we're looking at trying to work with are things like motion blur. And what does motion blur look like in stereo if you're inside it? So, for example, you have a car moving away from you with quite a lag of motion blur in it. That is all around you. So how do we put that into a 3D space? How do we shoot that? How do we make that work? These are things that we're sort of playing at, trying to involve, and these are the very earliest tests of looking at aspects of that. It's like if you're in an explosion, in a bomb, that bomb can go off all around you. You can actually create a feeling that it's actually you're actually inside part of that explosion. These are things that we would actually like to explore and like to kind of have some form of very kind of concise language that we can actually utilize to sort of change the way that you actually kind of view a fairly standard experience that everybody knows, everybody sees on a regular basis in the cinema. Hopefully not everybody experiences a bomb blast, but you can actually have something that is much more immediate and more precise. And that, coupled with the soundtrack, will actually give you a shape to the narrative arc of your film on the basis that you are in a different place in your experience, you have a different experiential feel to the way that the actual film is progressing. And that can punctuate and be very specific as a dynamic about how you actually utilize your effects within the film and how you can pace your film. So, for example, in the main feature, we'll have what we're calling spike guns in there, which are little motor-powered rockets. If these have been shot from the camera point of view, pointing away, the trails that would be on there could actually be very sort of extremely attractive. It could be sort of drifting through. We would have, for example, electronic writing, or sort of electricity sort of writing in there, which can move and gently shift, and you can actually stretch out and move through it. All of these things, they're kind of old-fashioned ideas that have been utilized in 2D, but in 3D, when you put the volumetric area on it, you can pass through them, and they can actually be something that effectively you are almost witnessing firsthand. And so it's really exciting. I think it is a completely different language in terms of how to structure visual effects for a feature film. And there are a whole host of different aspects. Now, when we were looking at the faces at the end, the masks that we were trying to create, I mean, because we were working with a limited budget and limited time, what we made for that, I think, worked fantastically well. For a feature, we would do a different form of scanning, and we would scan the heads properly, and we would actually move so we can actually physically exchange them. They'll be a little bit more finished and possibly less feeling like they're not quite sitting on the face. But all of these things are, with the time and with the budget, are perfectly achievable. So these are an idea of how the development, say, for example, of, in this case, the Fumati creature, will develop partly as our tool set develops and partly as we actually understand more about what they are. So making this film enabled us to actually get to grips, firstly, with the technology that we're trying to portray. Obviously, it's a sort of slightly dystopian, futuristic society, but also with the techniques of how to produce that and the technology that we need to produce that. So as, I suppose, so as an exercise in finding out, it has been completely invaluable. And the beauty about it is that it's just such fun. And if you think about how to produce an effect, or what sort of an effect you want, and what it is actually for, and the dynamic of that effect, then you can almost go anywhere, I think, in 3D, so long as you actually understand that you're actually working in the volume and not trying to sort of plant things on the surface.